Welcome to the Sea of Startups, where Southeast Asia's startup game gets real. There's no tech bro fluff here, no Silicon Valley cosplay. We're just trying to get bold takes, sharp turns, and the unfiltered stories from founders and funders building the future of this region.
Kim, I'm the producer and co-founder of this relaunch, and alongside Kevin Brockland of Indelible Ventures, where we're pulling back the curtain on what it actually takes to raise, build, and win in the fastest growing markets in the world. If you're in a game on one end, this is where the real talk happens. So let's take it from the top. Kevin, what made you hit record the first time round?
To be honest with you, I'm an avid consumer of podcasts. I listen to a lot of them, and I just didn't feel like there were a lot of solid stories that were relevant and localized across Southeast Asia. You have a few pockets here and there, but I wasn't really getting kind of the value add material that I see out of some of the ones that I follow so closely. It was really that. And I'm bouncing around the region, hearing founder stories, meeting some of the seasoned folks as well. And I just thought that there was a lot of opportunity in order to kind of bridge the divide between the ones who have been there, done that, and the folks that are just coming up. And it worked pretty well until I was a little bit too narrow in the original launch. And I'll tell you why I think I was too narrow. The original idea was basically kind of proof of concept. I really focused upon a particular country market, which was Malaysia, where I'm currently based at. And I really wanted to get kind of the fresh stories from founders about their origin journeys. What was it like to decide to do the startup? What was it like to get your first customers? What did the first MVP look like? All of those sort of like early iterating stories. And so because of that, I wanted it relevant and recent. So I really tried to find guests for it that were, either were raising their A round, had just raised their A round, were kind of around that sort of stage. And I just kind of ran out of a population set in Malaysia of, there's only a finite number of them. And then there's a smaller number that are willing to come on and talk about it with me. And I kind of ran out of content. And so since then and now, a lot of the conversations that you and I have had centered around, well, what can we do differently this time? What is the market actually need?
That's a good way to take another spin at it. But then again, apart from that, I just have to ask this: like, was there like a typical specific moment or a convo that made you think, yeah, like the pivotal moment that makes you think this is it, this is what we're gonna do, like this needs to be recorded? Is there any moment like that that source or that point of epiphany?
I don't know if I could necessarily point to a particular one. I think that it was just the aggregation of a lot of stories where, as I'm talking to first time founders across the region, there's a bit of perfectionism in the intent. While when I talk to the seasoned founders, they're a little bit more of the iterative mindset. And it was more of like bridging that chasm. And making it realize that like all the first time founders have heard the idea of like lean startup, MVP, but when it comes down to it, you have this perfectionism of like let's release it, let's over design it and make it perfect before we go to market. And that's the complete opposite of what the success stories out there really did. So it was more of that, and the intent of like let's record this so that your local hero, the person that lives just the neighborhood over, those sort of stories, because the ones that we hear are out in Silicon Valley, like they don't have as much. They're really cool to hear. You can learn a lot from them, but they're so far away that they feel detached. I don't necessarily feel that folks here necessarily get the same sort of um, energy from listening to those same stories.
So I guess what we're trying to say is similar to any startup. It's going to be, even building this thing, it's going to be something very iterative as well, something relatable to the real. I mean, something imitating or emulating the startup life is what we are going at with this podcast. Is that's where the direction is, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with this one, we're doing a pivot right now. We're doing a reset, trying to move forward and put a new product out in the market that hopefully will end up landing with the audience.
And sounds good. And you and I started chatting about this relaunch maybe late last year or early this year. Like when we brought it up seriously, I think let's go back to that point because relaunching and all that. What was your first gut response then?
It's always been something that I've wanted to do. The challenge is that it became a time constraint, because like there's an aspect of just do it versus do it well versus do it sufficient. Um, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Coming back to what I said before, but it has to be done with a good enough intent that it actually has viability. You can't just put minimum product. You have to put minimum viable product. And the definition of viable is the key factor here. And, my time is getting constrained between what I would consider true day job, which is the investing activity side of things. I'm on airplanes here, there, everywhere, community events, speaking in roles and mentoring. And so needed some additional firepower in order to make this happen.
Okay, I guess in some ways we met. There's a reason why we have all these stories and we met, and here we are. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me flip the table with you on that question. We were having that conversation. What was your draw to come in on a content business looking at startups?
I think the way I see it is that I come from a pretty layered background, with finance, strategy, and whatnot. And when I was in banking, and I just felt, there's something more to life than just looking at P&Ls and numbers. There needs to be some zest in it. And so I was in VC for a bit, and I think that's where I felt most alive, for lack of a better word. So I think it's a lot about the VC scene. It emulates it with life. So I thought, okay, this is very interesting. And then we met, and then it's like, okay, you're looking at podcasting. And when I was a kid, going back to the core of myself, it's more of I always liked media. I was apparently a walking dictionary of movies and whatnot, and I always like putting things out there. And there was not much of an opportunity to do it until now. And I thought, wow, this resonates with me. It hits the core, to the deepest level. And I thought, okay, let us try to put things out there with the intention of helping and hopefully having some impact within this space. So I thought, yeah, let's just jump on it with a leap of faith. It's going to be fun and much more for the fun of it, and the intent that comes with it is more of what I'm looking at. I think it's more about what we can create. I think it's about putting content, putting creating it. It's what fills me. So I think this is a great spot to be in. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully as we start coming along with this, we'll probably end up doing some iterations, ideally drive a little bit of community and get some feedback along the way. I think that's going to be one of the big things in order to kind of drive this from intention to ambition.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just to add on from that point as well, I think within the startup scene, it's that what really pulled me in was seeing the emotional volatility of building, the bravado, the breakdowns, the pivots no one hear about. So that messy middle, that's the part that gets me. So yeah, I think that's something that keeps me going, and you're also helping to shape this whole thing. And what kind of stories do you want to spotlight that aren't being told?
So generally in the startup ecosystem, and this applies to almost every geography. It's not specific to Southeast Asia, but we have a tendency in the community to really focus upon two stories. We focus upon the people that are fundraising and the successful fundraisers out there, and we celebrate those. And then we have the scandals on the opposite end of the spectrum, which we can't help but click in, read, see how we crashed and those other sorts of downsides of it. And while that's all well and good, I mean, I get into it as well, but I think the the thing that I find most interesting is more on a couple fold. When you're talking about the startups, I get really into the how we did it sort of aspect of it. Getting into beyond just kind of like that surface level where you can talk about we increased revenue. I want to know, but how? How did you do it? How did you know that it was time to expand it into a new country market? How did you know that you needed to add a new product line? How did you know that you needed to change your revenue model? How did you know that you needed to pivot? All of like the stories that are kind of below the surface that you don't really hear. Fortunately, in the last iteration, we were able to get a lot of those. I think this time around, we'll just try not to narrow it so much and still try and get some of those stories. But on the other side of the equation, I think one of the other things that I'm quite keen to get into as well is rounding out the perspective by also getting funder and ecosystem players' points of view, and then maybe get a couple of CVCs to come and talk about it. Maybe try and get a couple of corporate buyers of technology. There's a lot of avenues of areas where I think that if I look at it from the standpoint of where's there an information deficit, I think there's a lot of avenues that we could go down.
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, sounds. I think the way how we are looking at it is more comprehensive. It touches on a lot of things, not just within the founder aspect or operator aspect. It's very wholesome, I would say. It sounds exciting, and I really hope that we are able to pull this in. The more episodes, the better, and getting more content out. Um. Okay, but I have to ask though. Let's be honest. C content either parrots a bit of Silicon Valley or feels a bit polite, apart from the corporate side. What else do you think that's essential, or rather, it's missing from the whole storytelling apart from the how? Because there's many aspects to it too, right? I'm just squeezing it a bit further just to pick your brain a bit more.
No, it's a fair point because as you mentioned, you either get like too much of the tech bro sort of like growth at all cost, hoorah, it's the grind and hustle, all of that, so that sort of stuff. Or like when there's real problems that we should be talking about, you get kind of dancing around the issue and not just kind of like saying what needs to be said. Um, now, you know, maybe I'm a little bit blunt. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know, but I don't generally have the patience for beating around the bush, and I don't actually think that it's the polite thing to just ignore the hole in the ground. If there's a hole in the boat and you're sinking, you might as well say, "Hey, there's a hole in it. Let's patch it up." And I think that's one of the things that we need to have real honest conversations on, is to say what's working and what's not. And it's not a matter of like shame and blame. I think the key aspect is we should be talking about what's wrong, but we should be talking about solutions, not problems. And that's hopefully an angle that we can take and get some diverse views, because I don't have all the answers. I've lived in this part of the world for 8 years. I haven't been around long enough to understand every single nuance. I'm not without my opinions, some controversial, some get me in a little bit of trouble with some folks, but that's okay. But I think that's the angle that I would ideally want to go with it.
Okay, and then let's flip it another way. What kind of conversation do you not want to have? What are we leaving behind in terms of format or energy?
I don't want to do promotional content. I don't mind running an advertisement, because like ultimately, this could end up having a sponsor or something like that. But I don't want fluff. You know what I mean? Like the fluffy sort of like, let's make everyone feel good. Everything's all right. I'm just gonna invite somebody on so that I can tell them how great they are. I don't find that interesting when I listen to them, and I can't imagine trying to create that same sort of content.
So, no founder highlight reels, no humble brag marathons, and we are skipping the here's my perfect journey and digging into really what happens in between the pitch decks.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Although I may drop in my own subtle humble brags as well, because I have been known to kind of like flip flop between self deprecating humor and the occasional humble brag, sometimes in the same sentence. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think it's all fine as long as this is subtle. I mean, there's always a silver lining in between it, isn't it? So we just gotta go with it. It's as long as it's not an image of perfection where no one will be able to relate to is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're calling this a soft launch and we're serious about where this is going. What can the listeners expect from this next few episodes?
So, we're still we're trying to hammer out the full schedule. So we've got a lot of content like thought of. The release dates are not necessarily there, but I think part of it is like we've in the relaunch. I kind of feel like we got to do like a lay of the land a little bit, just to kind of recap what's going on across the region, so that as we delve deeper into topics, we've already kind of refreshed that base. And part of that is looking at like what's the state of the ecosystem, what's the state of this country, what's the state of that country, what's the state of the new technology that's driving all of the buzz. And within that, there's a number of stories. So um, release calendar, at least for the time that we're talking right now, is still TBD. But we've got some interesting stuff that's been thought up.
What do you think? I mean, if you're to give some our audiences a taste of it, what do you think stands out more to you at the top of your head right now? What's coming up?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we're going to be talking early stage founders. We're going to be talking startup ecosystem. We're going to be talking founders and funders, but we're going to try and push deeper on some of those founder journeys so that we can get a little bit more punchy, get some contradictions, get some diverse viewpoints, get some kind of whether we call them hot takes or not, and, maybe some vulnerability. So maybe it'll get a little bit spicy. Maybe we'll spill the tea here and there. We'll see.
Okay, and we want to stay accountable, right? Like this isn't just about dropping hard content. It's about building something that sticks. Let's say, I mean, big picture thinking, real talk. Kevin, fast forward a year. What does success look like for a sea of startups? What do you envision for it? Just to get a sense of where we want to go.
Yeah, so I mean, I would love for it to become the must listen for Southeast Asia and for folks that are outside of the region. It's kind of the go to in order to understand what's going on over here. I think that's an ambitious sort of longer term sort of where we want to steer the ship to. I want, other things like I want people to actually get real value out of it. So if a founder comes and says, "Hey, that episode made me rethink my strategy. My business got 2x better just because of what I heard from one of those stories that you were talking about," or I avoided a bad term sheet because you were spilling the juice on what we should look at and what we shouldn't. We've encouraged more players from outside to better understand and are comfortable with bringing capital in. For me, there's not necessarily a single metric, but if we can have a small part in helping drive the ecosystem forward and hear that sort of feedback from the different ecosystem players, I think that's success in my book.
That sounds good. Then we'll got to strive for that, and hopefully it will work out in time to come. I mean, everything happens at the right time, the right reason, and once we have our strong content and once we're doing it from an authentic place, I guess things will definitely fall into place.
Yeah, we'll see. It's choppy waters in the sea of startups, and as the acronym of the show is, there's a little bit of an SOS out there as well, which hopefully we'll have some fun playing around with the name as we go along with the show and the taglines and whatnot.
Yeah, it emulates the startup world essentially. Choppy waters, there'll be monsoons here and there. It's real, it's true. It hits the core. So I think that's what a startup life is anyway. That's it for kickoff. Raw, honest, and hopefully just to start. If you're building, funding, or just trying to keep up with Southeast Asia's wild, weird, and wonderful startup scene, you're in the right place. Follow the Sea of Startups whenever you get your podcast. And if you're listening, tag us, share, tell us what stuck with you. And this is your backstage. Pass to what's really going on in C. Hey, it's Kim again. Just adding one more layer, little tiny little itty bit before we officially sign off this pilot episode. A bit of my take, really. This podcast relaunch means a lot to me. A whole lot, actually. Not just because I'm co hosting it, but because I'm producing it with a lot of real intent, a lot of soul, a lot of heart, real talk. I always wanted to create stuff. Especially in the media. As you've heard, right? Always want to put something out there and hopefully it resonates with you or help someone in any way I can. My little way of doing it, trying to help. And at the very least, as we journey through this, I hope you enjoy it. My past banking was stability, VC was electricity. Yeah, I'm pretty proud I say that. But somewhere in between, I just didn't want to analyze stories anymore. I'm looking to amplify stories that hopefully resonated with you. And now, what I'm really excited about is the putting out perspective shifting content, things that move you, your heart, or the industry, or things that make people think. Stories that challenge how we see founders, funders, and the region we call home. I've sat in rooms where founders whispered their doubts off mic, only to go on stage and deliver polished highlight reels. Any takers for Shakespeare's Life's Brief Candle? Pretty much the same, about actors being on stage and then what happens behind the scenes is a totally different thing. And that disconnect, that's not vanity, it's survival. And I want this space to be the in-between. I also think we need to give more airtime to ambition. In Southeast Asia, ambition can be quiet, almost apologetic, and it can be quite painful. And I get that because I lived through it. Well, newsflash, I'm born and raised in Southeast Asia. At this point, I think it runs in my blood. But I also want us to stop underplaying what we are capable of here. And this is to everyone. And I would say, especially to women, you and I both know it's a constant struggle. But anyway, let's put it aside. Slight tangent, sorry. So back to it. Sea of Startups is a place where ambition doesn't have to be noisy to be real. It's your own. Everyone has their own journey, their own ambition on how they want to do it. And honestly, different strokes for different folks. It's pure and simple as that. And where, messiness isn't a weakness. Where we can be both gritty and thoughtful, sensitive even, and still make great content. So yeah, this is a soft launch. No polish, no script, just us figuring out in real time. Just like life, everyone's still figuring out their journey. And I'm grateful for your presence. Thank you for being here from day one, listening in. And I look forward to having you on board. Drop us comments. Let us know what you think. Even if it's controversial, your voice matters. And I can't wait to hear more from you guys. And until then, I'll see you guys on the next episode drop. And in the meantime, peace out and take care, everyone. See ya. And hey, if you're still here, we've got a little something extra for you.
So yeah, we figured why not give a little bit of a sneak peek into what's coming next.
Next up, we are diving into seed strapping. And no, it's not just, another startup buzzword.
Yeah, Seedstrap is sitting somewhere in between bootstrapping and that full throttle VC acceleration. It's lean, it's focused, it's increasingly relevant in Southeast Asia. Capital's not always abundant, and not all capital is desirable, to be perfectly honest.
So you're talking to founders who have chosen this path intentionally, raising just enough to prove traction, preserve optionality, and stay in control. They're not chasing unicorn headlines. They are building real businesses with discipline baked in from day one.
Yeah, so we're gonna go deep into what it takes to seedstrap in this region, what founders have to trade off, and why this might be the smarter path. Maybe not the only path, but for some operators out there, it may be a smarter path for them.
So, if you're a founder navigating early stage uncertainty, or an investor rethinking your theses, this is a conversation worth having.
Yeah, anticipate that it will be raw, maybe a little gritty, but ideally full of takeaways.
So in episode 1, we talked about why we relaunched Sea of Startups. And in this episode, the second one, we zoom in on one of the core ideas shaping the way we built here, seed strapping.
Yeah, so I'll be back, but not as co-host this time. I'll be the first official guest talking about this deep dive on the mindset, capital strategy, and what the future of early stage in Southeast Asia may look like.
And right after that, we might just hear from a founder who seed strapped his way from zero to cash flow positive before any investor ever said yes. It's one of the grittiest, most practical build stories we've come across.
Yeah, so if you ever thought about how can I build this thing without having to give up control, this is going to be a story to hear.
So follow Sea of Startups wherever you get your podcasts, founders, and all the messy magic in between. This is your backstage pass.